So, okay. So the story that I'm going to be reading today is Only a Girl's Love by Charles Garvice. You can check it out. It's available online. So, without further ado, I'm going to start now. Chapter 1, Only a Girl's Love. It is a warm evening in early summer. The sun is setting behind a long range of fir and yew cloud hills. 1 second. Yes, I do read BL. Hey Pia Hamster, yeah, welcome back again. At the feet of which twists and out in and out, as it follows their curves, a placid, peaceful river. Opposite these hills, and running beside the river, are long stretching meadows, brilliantly green, with fresh springing grass, and gorgeously yellow with newly opened buttercups. Hi Soraya, welcome to the stream. Above, the sunset sky gleams and glow with fiery red and rich, deep chromes, and London is almost within sight. It is a beautiful scene, such as one sees only in this England of ours, a scene that defies poet and painter. At this very moment, it is defying one of the latter genus, for in a room of low-broomed, thatched roof cottage which stood on the margin of the meadows, James Atteridge sat behind his easel, his eyes fixed on the picture frame on the open window, his brush and maul stick drooping in his idle hands. Yeah, it's freaking night. Oh, hi Blossom. Yeah. Can I speak Malaysia? Boleh juga. Nak tahu apa ya? Yeah. Hello Emma, welcome to the stream. Okay. Where was I? I forgot. Give me a moment. Okay. So, unconsciously, he, the painter, made a picture worthy of study. Tall, thin, and delicately made, with pale face crowned in satin soft flowing white hair. You use caption live. That's okay. Don't worry about it. Right. So he looked up like one of those figures which old Florentine artists used to love to put upon their canvases, and which one sees even now makes one strangely sad and thoughtful. The room was a fitting frame for a human subject. It was a true painter's studio, and tidy, disordered, and picturesque. Finished and unfinished pictures hung and leant against the walls. Suit of armors, antique weapons, and strange costume. Yeah, yes, Yamada, this is an ASMR stream. Or rather, it's a book reading stream, whichever works for you. Strange costumes littered the floor and hung limply over the medieval chairs. Books, some in bindings which would have the mouth of a connoisseur water, lay open upon the table and were piled in a distant corner. Some in bindings which would have made the mouth of a connoisseur water, okay, and all over in silence, unbroken save by the sound of water rushing over the weir, or the birds which flitted by the open window, reigned supreme. So, the old man sat for some time, listening to nature's music, and in lost dreamy admiration of her loveliness, until the striking of the church clock floated from the village behind the house. Then, with a start, he rose, took up his brushes, and turned against the easel. An hour passed, and still he worked, the picture behind growing beneath the thin, skillful hand. The birds sank into silence. The red faded slowly from the sky, and night unfolded its dark mantle, ready to let it fall upon the workaday world. Silence so profound took to itself the likeness of loneliness. Perhaps the old man felt it so, for as he glanced at the waning light and laid his brush down, he put his hand to his brow and sighed. Then he turned the picture on the easel. Mudang, yes, that's Mudang. He turned the picture on the easel, made his way, with some little difficulty, owing to the litter, across the room, found and lit an old briarwood pipe, and dropping into the chair again, fixed his eyes upon the scene and fell into a dreamy state which was habitual with him. So lost in purposeless memory was he, that the opening of the door failed to rouse him. Give me a moment, guys. Okay. It was opened very gently and slowly, and as slowly and noiselessly a young girl, after pausing for a moment at the threshold, stepped into the room and stood around, looking at the motionless figure in the chair by the window. She stood for a full minute, her hand still holding the hand of the door, as if she was not certain of a welcome. As if the room was strange to her, then with a little hurried pressure of her hand to the bosom, she moved towards the window. As she did, so her foot struck against a piece of armor, and the noise aroused the old man and caused him to look around. With a stare, he gazed at the girl, and as if impressed with the idea she must be something substantial and visionary, some embodiment of his evening dreams. And so he sat, looking at her, his artist's eye taking the lithe, graceful figure, the beautiful face, with its dark eyes and long sweeping lashes, its clearly penciled brows, and soft, mobile lips, in rapt absorption. Hi Gala, thank you for coming to the stream. It is possible that if she had turned and left him, never to have crossed into his life again, he would have sunk into a dreamland, and in the end of his days had regarded her as unreal and visionary. But, with a subtle, graceful movement, the girl treaded the maze of litter and disorder and stood beside him. He, still looking up, and saw the beautiful eyes were dim, and that the exquisitely curved lips were quivering with some intense emotion. And suddenly, there broke upon the silence a low, sweet voice. "Are you James Etheridge?" The artist started. It was not the words, but the tone, the voice that startled him. And for a brief second, he was still dumb. And then he rose, looking at her with faint, trembling questioning. He answered, "Yes, James Etheridge." Etheridge. "Yes, that is my name. I am James Etheridge." Her lips quivered again, but still, quietly and simply, she said, "You do not know me? I'm Stella, your niece. Stella." The old man threw up his head and stared at her, and she saw that he trembled. "Stella, my niece, Harold's child." "Yes," she said in a low voice, "I'm Stella." "But merciful heaven!" he exclaimed with agitation. "How did you come here? Why, I thought you were at school there in Florence. Why have you come here alone?" Her eyes wandered from his face to the exquisite scene beyond, And at that moment, her look was strangely like his own. Yes, I came, uncle, alone. Merciful heaven, he murmured again, sinking into his chair. But why? Why? The question is not unkindly put, rather, full of troubled perplexity and bewilderment. Stella's eyes returned to his face. I am unhappy, uncle, she said, simply. Unhappy? He echoed, gently. Unhappy? My child, you are too young to know what this word means. Tell me. And he put his long white hand on her arm. The touch was one thing needed to draw them together. With a sudden yet not abrupt movement, she slid down at his side and leaned on her head on his arm. Yes, I was very unhappy, uncle. They were hard and unkind. They meant well, perhaps, but it was not to be borne. And then, after Papa died, it was so lonely, so lonely. There was no one to care for me, to care whether one lived or died. Uncle, I bore it as long as I could, and then I came here. Hi, Emma. I think she's about the middle age, maybe teens, but definitely not a minor. Okay. Where were we? The old man's eyes grew dim, and his hand rose gently to her head, and smoothed the rich, silky hair. Poor child! Poor child! He murmured, dreamily, looking not at her, but at the gloaming outside. As long as I wrong character. As long as I could, uncle, until I felt that I must run away, or go mad, or die. Then I remembered you. I had never seen you, but I remembered that you were Papa's brother, and at that, being of the same blood, you must be good, and kind, and true. So I resolved to come to you. His hand trembled on her head, but he was silent for a moment. Then he said, Why did you not write? A smile crossed the girl's face. Because they would not permit us to write, excepting under their dictation. We startled, and a fiery light flashed from the gentle, dreamy eyes. No letters were allowed. No letters were allowed to leave the school unless the principals had read them. We were never out alone, or would I have posted a letter unknown to them? No, I could not write, or I would have done so, and waited. You would not have waited long, my child, he murmured. She threw her head back and kissed his hand. It was a strange gesture, more foreign than English, full of the impulsive gracefulness of the passionate South, in which she had been born and bred. It moved the uncle strangely, and he drew her closer to him as he whispered, Go on, go on. Well, I made up my mind to run away, she continued. It was a dreadful thing to do, but if I had been caught and brought back, they would have... Stop, he broke in with passionate dread. Why did I not know of this? How did Harold come to send you there? Great heaven, a young tender girl. Can heaven permit it? Heaven permits strange things, uncle, said the girl, gravely. Papa did not know, just as you did not. It was an English school, and all was fair and pleasant outside. Outside? Well, the night just after I had received the money, you used to send me each quarter. I bribed one of the servants to leave the door open and ran away. I knew the road to the coast, and knew what day and time the boat started. I caught it and reached London. There was just enough money to pay for the fare down here, and I, that is all, uncle. All, he murmured. A young tender child. And are you not angry? She asked, looking up at his face. You will not send me back? Angry? Send you back? My child, do you think that I had known if I could imagine that you were not well treated, that you were not happy, that I would have permitted you to remain a day, an hour longer, then I could have helped. Your letters always spoke of your contentment and happiness. She smiled. Remember, they were written with somebody looking over my shoulder. Yeah, Emma, I agree with you. Uncle is so kind. Anyway, back to it. Something like an imprecation, surely the first he had uttered for many long years, was smoothed on the gentle lips. I could not have known that. I could not have known that, Stella. Your father thought it was best. I have had his last letter. My child, do not cry. She raised her face. I'm not crying. I never cry when I think of Papa, Uncle. Why should I? I loved him too well to wish him back from the heaven. The old man looked down at her with a touch of awe in his eyes. Yes, he murmured. It was in his best wishes you should remain there and school. He knew what I was, an aimless dreamer, a man living out on the world, and no fit guardian for a young girl. Oh yes, Harold knew. He acted for the best, and I was content. My life was too lonely and quiet and lifeless for a young girl, and I thought that was all right, while those fiends... She then put her hand on his arm. Do not let us speak of them, or think of them anymore, Uncle. You will stay with me, will you not? I shall think your life lonely. It will be a paradise after which I have left. Paradise. And see, I will strive to make it less lonely. But... And she turned away with a look of troubled fear. But perhaps I shall be in your way? And she looked round. No, he said, and he put his hand to his brow. It is strange. I never felt my loneliness till now, and I would not have you go for the world. She wound her arms around him and nestled closer, and there was a silence for a space. How old are you, Stella? She thought a moment. 19, Uncle. 19? A child? He murmured, and then he looked at her, and his lips moved inaudibly as he thought. Beautiful as an angel, but she heard him. Her face flushed. Hey, TSH Crate, thank you so much for the ice cream. But the next moment, she looked up, and frankly and simply. You would not have said that much if you have seen Mama. She was beautiful as an angel. Papa used to say that, and he wished that you could have seen her, that you would have liked to paint her. Yes, she was beautiful. Hey, Unknown, thank you so much for the like. The artist nodded. Poor motherless child, he murmured. Okay, sorry, one moment. Hi, Tabby. Thank you all guys. Thank you so much for the like. Yeah, Tabby, what book am I reading? To answer your question, sorry guys, I'm gonna take a pause from the reading. I'm reading Only a Girl's Love by Charles Garvice. You can search it up online. Okay. Where was I? Yes, she was beautiful. Right. Yes, she was beautiful, continued the girl. I can just remember her, Uncle. Papa never recovered from her death. He always said that he counted the days till he should meet her again. He loved her so, you see. There was silence again, and the artist spoke. You speak English with scarcely an accent, Stella. The girl laughed. It was the first time she had laughed, and it caused the uncle to start. Thank you so much, Tabby, for the follow. It was not only because of it was unexpected, but because of its exquisite music. It was like the thrill of a bird. In an instant, he felt that her childish sorrow had not embittered her life or broken her spirit. Oh my god. Hey Tabby, thank you so much for the ice cream. Right. Have not embittered her life or broken his spirit. He found himself almost unconsciously laughing in harmony. What a strange observation, uncle, she said. When the laugh had died away, why, I am English, right to the backbone, as Papa used to say. Often and often he used to look at me and say, Italy has no part and parcel in beyond your birth, Stella. You belong to that little island which floats in Atlantic and rules the world. Oh yes, I am English. I should be sorry to be anything else, notwithstanding Mama was an Italian. Yes, that's correct, Emma. They are arguing because of accents. He nodded. Yes, I remember Harold, your father. Always said you were an English girl. I'm glad of that. So am I, said the girl, naively. Then he relapsed into one of his dreamy sequences, and she waited, silent and motionless. Suddenly, he felt her quiver under his arm and heave a long, deep sigh. With a start, he looked down. Her face has gone woefully pale to the very lips. Stella, he cried. What is it? Are you ill? Great heaven! She smiled at him. No, only a little tired and... I think I'm a little hungry. You see, I've only had enough for the fair. Heaven forgive me, he cried, starting up as so suddenly as almost to upset her. Oh, so... 1 second. Soraya, thank you so much for the follow. Yeah, feed her uncle. I know, right? Okay. Here I have been, dreaming and mooning with a child was starving. What a brainless idiot I am. And in his excitement, he hurried up and down the room, knocking over a painting here and lay a figure there, and looking aimlessly about as if he was expecting to see something in the shape of food floating in the air. At last, with his hand to his brow, he bethought him of the bell, and rang it of the little cottage resounded as if it was a fire engine station. There was a hurried patter of footsteps outside. The door was suddenly opened, and a middle-aged woman ran in, with a cap very much awry, and a face startled and flushed. Gracious me, sir! Sorry. What's the accent for this? Never mind, I'll just read it aloud for now. Gracious me, sir, what's the matter? She exclaimed. Mr. Atteridge dropped the bell, and without a word of explanation, exclaimed, Bring something to eat at once, Miss Penfold, and some wine, and at once, please. The poor child is starving. The woman looked at him with amazement that increased as glancing around the room she failed to see any poor child, Stella being hidden behind the antique high-backed chair. Poor child? What poor child? You've been dreaming, Mr. Atteridge. No, he said meekly. It's all true, Mr. Spanfield. She has come all the way from Florence without a morsel to eat. Stella rose from her ambush. Not all the way from Florence, uncle, she said. Mrs. Penfield startled and stared at the visitor. Good gracious me, she exclaimed. Who is it? Did I not tell you now? It is my niece Stella. She has come from Italy And I wish you bring some food. Bring a bottle of the old wine. Sit down and rest, Stella. This is Mrs. Panfold. She's my housekeeper. And a good woman. But, he added, without lowering a tone in the slightest, though he was evidently under the idea he was inaudible, but rather slow in comprehension. That's correct, Mrs. Panfield probably thinks her uncle is crazy. Mrs. Panfold came forward, still flushed and excited, with a smile. Your niece, sir. Not Mr. Harold's daughter that you spoke so often about. Why? How did you come in, miss? I found the door open, said Stella. Good gracious me, and dropped from the clouds. That must have been an hour ago. And you, sir? Looking at the bewildered artist reproachfully. You let the dear young thing sit here with her hat and jacket on all the time, all coming all the way, without sending for me? We didn't want you, said the old man, calmly. Want me? No, but the dear child wanted something to eat, and to rest, and to take her things off. Oh, come with me, miss, all the way from Florence. Oh, Mr. Harold's daughter. Go with her, Stella, said the old man, and don't let her keep you too long. The infinite tenderness of the last words caused Stella to step on her way to the door. She came back, and putting her arms around his neck, kissed him. Then she followed Mrs. Panfield upstairs to her room, the good woman talking the whole while in exclamatory sentences of astonishment. And you are Mr. Harold's daughter. Did you see his portrait over the mantel shelf, miss? I should have known you by that, now that I come to look at you. And she looked with affectionate interest into the beautiful face. Oh, Emma, thank you so much for the heart. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. As she helped Stella take off her hat. Yes, I should have known you. Miss, in a moment. I'm glad you have come all the way from Italy. Dear me, it is wonderful, and I am very glad you have. It won't be so lonely for Mr. Etheridge. And is there anything you want, miss? You must excuse me for bringing you into my own room. I'll have a room ready for you tonight. Your own room. And the luggage, miss. Yeah, thank you, Leogua noises. And the luggage, miss. Stella smiled and blushed faintly. I have none, Mrs. Panfold. I ran. I left quite suddenly. Dearie me, murmured Mrs. Panfold, puzzled and sympathetic. Well, now it doesn't matter so long as you are here safe and sound. And now I'll go and get you something to eat. You can find your way down. Yes, Stella said. She could find her way down. She stood for a moment, looking through the window, her long hair falling in a silky stream down her white shoulders, and the soft, dreamy look came into her eyes. Is it true? She murmured. Am I really at home with someone to love me? Someone who I can love? Or is it only a dream? Shall I wake up in a cold, bare room and find that I still have to endure this old life? No, it is no dream. It is true. She wound up the long hair and went down to find Mrs. Panfold had already prepared a table, her uncle standing beside and waiting with a gentle impatience for her appearance. He started as she entered with a distinct feeling of renewed surprise, the relief from uncertainty as to her welcome. The kindness of her reception had already refreshed her, and her beauty shone out unclouded by doubt or nervousness. The old man's eyes wandered with artistic approval over the gracious form and lovely face, and he was almost in the land of dreams again when Mrs. Panfold roused him by setting a chair at the table and handing him a cobwebbed bottle and corkscrew. Miss Stella, you must be starving, sir, she said, suggestively. Yes, yes, he assented, and both of them set to work, encouraging her to eat, as if they feared she might drop under the table with exhaustion, unless she could be persuaded to eat anything on the table. Mr. Atteridge seemed to place great faith in the old port as a restorative, and had some difficulty in concealing his disappointment when Stella, after sipping the first glass, declined any more on the score that it was too strong. At last, but with visible reluctance, he accepted her assertion that she was rescued from any chance of starvation, and Mr. Panfold cleared the table and left them alone. Hi Farhana, thank you so much for coming in. I hope you had a good day. A lamp stood on the table, but the moonbeams poured in through the window, and instinctively Stella drew near the window. What a lovely place it is, uncle, she said. He did not answer. He was watching her musingly as she leaned against the edge of the wall. You must be very happy here. Yes, and I think you will be, Stella. Ah, yes, she answered in a low voice and a low sigh. Hi, Emma. Yeah, I think she already ate, but you refused the wine, I think, according to what I understand. Happier than I was. Sorry. So this is back to Stella. Okay. Happier than I can say. You will not feel it lonely. Shut up with an old man, a dreamer, who has parted with the world and almost forgotten it. No, 1,000 times, was the reply. He wandered to the fireplace and took up his pipe, but with a sudden glance at her, laid it down again. Slight as was the action she saw it, and with a graceful, lithe movement which he had noticed, she glided across the room and took up the pipe. You were gonna smoke, uncle. No, he said eagerly. No, a mere habit. She interrupted him with a smile and filled the pipe for him with her taper little fingers and gave it to him. You do not want me to wish that I had not come for you, uncle? God heavens forbid, he said, simply. Then you must not alter anything in your life. You must go on as if I had never dropped from the clouds to be a burden upon you. My child, he murmured reproachfully. Or to make you uncomfortable. I could not bear that, uncle. No, he said. I will alter nothing, Stella. We will be happy, you and I. Very, very happy, she murmured softly. He wandered to the window and stood looking out. Unseen by him, she drew a chair and cleared it of the litter, and unconsciously he sat down. Then she glided to and fro, wandering round the room noiselessly, looking at the curious lumber, and instinctively picking up the books and putting them, something like in order, on the almost empty shelves. Every now and then, she took up one of the pictures which stood with their faces to the wall, and her gaze would wander from it to the painter sitting in the moonlight, his white hair falling on his shoulders, his thin, nervous hands clasped on his knees. She, who had spent her life in the most artistic city of the world, knew that he was a great painter, and childwoman as she was, wondered why the world would permitted him to remain unknown and unnoticed. She had yet to learn that he cared as little for fame as he did for wealth, and to be allowed to live for his art and dream in peace was all he asked from the world in which he lived, but in which he took no part. Presently, she came back to the window and stood beside him. He started slightly and put out his hand, and she put her thin white wand into it. The moon rose higher in the heavens, and the old man raised his other and pointed it to silence. As he did so, Stella saw a glide into the scene, as it was touched by the moonbeams. A large white building rearing above the trees on the hilltop, and she uttered an exclamation of surprise. "What house is that, uncle? I had no idea one was there until this moment." "That is the Windward Hall, Stella," he replied, dreamily. "It was hidden by the shadow and the clouds." "What a grand place," she murmured. "Who lives there, uncle?" "The Windwards," he answered, in the same musing tone. "The Windwards. Now, they have lived there for hundreds of years, Stella. Yes, it is a grand place." Hi Farhana, thank you for checking me on YouTube. Tell me about... Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so back to Stella. "Tell me about them," she said, quietly. "Do you know them? Are they friends of yours?" Hey Farhana, thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. "I know them, yes. They are friends, as far as any friendship between a poor painter and a lord of Windward. Yes, yes. We are friends. They call them proud, but they're not too proud to ask James Etheridge to dinner occasionally. And they accuse him of pride, because he declines to break the stillness of his life by accepting their hospitality. Look to the left, Stella. As far as you can see stretches the lands of Windward. They run for miles between the hills there." "They must have some reason to be proud," she murmured, with a smile. "But I like them because they are kind to you." He nodded. "Yes, the Earl would be more than kind, I think." "The Earl?" "Yes, Lord Windward, the head of the family. The Lord of Windward, they call him. They have all called Lords of Windward by the people here, who look up to them as if they were something more than human." "And does he live there, alone?" she asked, gazing at the grey stone mansion glistening in the moonlight. "No. There is a Lady Windward and a daughter. Poor girl." "Why do you say poor girl?" asked Stella. "Because all the wealth of the race would make her otherwise than an object of tender pity. She is an invalid. You see that window? The one with the light in it?" "Yes," Stella said. "That is the window of her room. She lies there on the sofa, looking down at the valley all the day." Okay. That is chapter 1. What do you guys think of the story so far? Are you guys entertained? Is it interesting enough? Emma, thank you so much. That really means a lot to me. Okay, don't worry. I'll jump into chapter 2. I'm not ending my stream yet. Don't worry. Just give me one quick moment. Okay. Chapter 2. Poor girl, murmured Stella. There was a silence for a moment. And those three live in there, all alone? She said. Not always, he replied, musingly. Sometimes, not often. The son Lanchester comes down. He is Viscount Trevor. The son, said Stella. And what is he like? The question seemed to set some train of thought in action. The old man relapsed into silence for a few minutes. Then, suddenly, but gently, he rose, and going on to the other of the room, fetched a picture from amongst several standing against the wall, and held it toward her. That is Lord Lanchester, he said. Stella took the canvas in her hands and held it to the light. An exclamation broke involuntarily from her lips. How beautiful he is! The old man took the picture from her and, resting it on his knees, gazed at it musingly. Yes, he said, it is a grand face. One does not see such a face often. Stella leaned over to the chair and looked at it with a strange feeling of interest and curiosity, such as no simple beautiful picture would have aroused. It was not the regularity of the face, with its clear-cut features and its rippling chestnut hair, that, had it been worn by a windward of 100 years ago, would have fallen in rich curls upon the square, well-formed shoulders. It was not the beauty of the face, but as something indefinable in the carriage of the head and the expression of the full dark eyes that attracted, almost fascinated, her. It was in a voice, almost hushed by the indescribable effect produced by the face, that she said, And he's like that? It is lifelike, he answered. I, who painted it, should not say it, but it is like him nonetheless. That is Leicester Windward. Why do you ask? 1 second. Hey Papa, yes, Malaysia, I'm from Malaysia. Okay, where were we? Stella hesitated. Because I scarcely know. It is such a strange face, uncle. The eyes? What is it in the eyes that makes me almost unable to look away from them? The reflection of a man's soul, Stella, he said. Hey Papa. Yeah. Tangkap mana? Yeah, he's very cute. Memang comel. Thank you. Okay. It was a strange answer. And the girl looked down at the strange face, interrogatively. The reflection of a mad soul, Stella. The Windwards have always been a wild, reckless, passionate race. Here, in this village, there are innumerable legends of the daring deeds of the Lords of Windward. Murder, rape. I believe that's supposed to be rape. Okay, raping. Okay. High-handed tyranny in the olden times, wild license, and desperate profligacy in these modern ones. But of all the race, this Leicester Windward is the wildest and most heedless. Look at him, Stella. You see him in this loose shooting jacket, built by Paul, with a diamond pin in his irreproachable scarf, with his hair to the regulation length. I see him in mirror, with his sword upraised to watch the passionate fire of his eyes. There is a picture in the great gallery, yonder in one of the windwards clad just so, in armor of the glistering steel, with one foot on the body of a prostrate foe, one hand upraised to strike the death-dealing blow of his battle axe. Yes, Leicester Windward should have lived for 4 centuries back. Stella smiled. Has he committed many Oh, sorry, wrong character. Has he committed many murders, uncle? Burned down many villages? The old man started and looked up at the exquisite face, with his arch smile beaming in the dark eyes and curving the red lips. Ripe lips, and smiled in response. I was dreaming, Stella. An odd trick of mine. No, men of his stamp are sadly circumscribed nowadays. We have left them no vent for their natures now. Excepting the gambling table, the turf, and... He rose suddenly. Yes, it's a beautiful face, Stella. But it belongs to a man who has done more harm in his day than all of his forefathers did before him. It is a rather good thing that the Windward Hall stands so firmly, or else Leicester would have melted it and Baccarat long ago. Is he so bad then? Hey Tabby, Yoru dah pernah berlakon dalam mana-mana film. Saya pernah buat voice acting tapi role kecil lah. Tapi kalau you nak recommend saya untuk future job, boleh juga. Thank you. That's my dream lah. Hey Emma, to answer your question, the Lord, I believe he is someone of he is of royal blood in this Windward family line, but he seems to have abused his family's success. That's my current understanding. It's also my first time reading. Hey Tabby, jangan cakap macam tu. Saya pun kuli juga. Nah, tak ada. I believe everyone here is capable of achieving great things. Sincerely. So, make sure the next time you masuk stream saya, make sure it's successful, eh? I pray for everyone's success. Every day. Just make sure to have a good night and rest up, okay? Okay, where was I? Is he so bad then, uncle? Murmured Stella. Her uncle smiled. Bad is a mild word, Stella. And yet, look at that face again. I have seen it, softened by a smile as such as might have been worn by an innocent child. I have heard those lips laugh as women are supposed to laugh before this world has driven all laughter out of them. And when those eyes smile, there is no resisting them for a man or a woman. He stopped suddenly and looked up. I am wandering on like an old mill. Put the picture away, Stella. She took it from him and carried it across the room, but stood there for a moment and silently regarding it by the lamplight. As she did so, a strange fancy made her start and set the picture on the table suddenly. It seemed to her as if the dark eyes had suddenly softened in their intense fixed gaze and smiled at her. It was a trick of the warm, imaginative temperament, and it took possession of her so completely that with a swift gesture she laid her hand over the dark eyes, and so she hid them. Then, with a laugh at her own folly, she put the picture against the wall and went back to the window and sat beside the old man. "Tell me about your past life, Stella," he said in a low voice. "It seemed to me that you have always been here. You have a quiet way of speaking and moving about, child." Oh, that sounds a bit rough. Let me rephrase that. "You have a quiet way of speaking and moving about, child." There you go. I learned that while Papa was ill," she said, simply. "Sometimes he would sit for hours, playing softly, and I did not wish to disturb him." I remember, he murmured. Stella, the world should have known something of him. He was a born musician." "He used to say the same of you, uncle. You should have been a famous artist." The old man looked up with a smile. "My child, there are many men whom the world knows nothing of. Luckily for them, your father and I were dreamers, both. The world likes men of action. Can you play?" She rose and stood for a moment, hesitating. In the corner of the room there was a small chamber organ, one of those wonderful instruments which in a small space combine the grand tones of a cathedral organ with the melodious softness of a flute. Hey Tabby, no, this is still the same story. We are just in chapter 2. Okay, where was I? It was one of the few luxuries which the artist has permitted himself, and he was in the habit of playing snatches of Verdi and Rossini and Schubert and Mozart, when the fading light compelled him to lay the brush aside. Stella went up to it softly and seated herself, and presently began to play. She attempted no difficult fugue or brilliant march, but played a simple Florentine Vesper hymn, which she had heard floating from the devout lips of women kneeling before the altar of the great church in Florence, and presently began to sing it. The old man started as the first clear bird-like notes rose softly from upon the evening air, and then covering his face with his hands, went straight into dreamland. The Vesper hymn died softly, slowly out, and she rose. But with a gesture in his hand, he motioned her to remain at the organ. "You have your father's voice, Stella. Sing again." She sang a pleasant ditty this time, with a touch of pathos in the refrain, and hearing a slight noise as she finished, looked around and saw the old man rise, and with a quivering lip turned towards the door. The young girl's sweet voice had brought back the past, and it's dead too plainly, and he had gone out, lest she should see his emotion. Stella rose and went to the window, and stood looking in the night. The moonlight was glinting the river in the distance, and falling in great masses upon the lawn at her feet. Half unconsciously, she opened the window, and stepping out, found herself in a small garden, beautifully kept and fragrant with violets. Her love of flowers was a passion, and she stepped onto the path in search of them. The path led in zigzag fashion into a little wooden gate, by which the garden was entered from the lane. Stella found some violets, and looking about in search of further treasure store, saw a bunch of lilac blossom growing in the lane side. Okay, give me a moment, guys. Reading is thirsty work. Make sure to stay hydrated, everyone. Okay, where were we? For a moment, she was so startled by the unexpected sound. She stood, looking towards the direction whence it came. And in that moment, a horse and a rider turned a corner and made full pelt for the spot where she was standing. Stella glanced back towards the little white gate to discover it was not in sight, and that she had gone further than she had intended. It was of no use to attempt to get back before the horseman reached her, and there was only time to get out of the way. Lightly springing up the bank, she stood up under the lilac tree and waited. As she did so, the horse and man came out from the shadow into the moonlight. To Stella, both looked tremendously big and tall in deceptive light, but it was not the size, but the attitude of the rider. Sorry, one moment. Give me a quick second, everyone. Okay. Where was I? Alright. She could not see his face, but the figure was that of a young man, tall and stalwart, and full of a strange, masterful grace, which displayed itself in an easy, reckless way in which he sat in the great animal, and in the poise of the head, which, slightly thrown back, seemed in its very attitude eloquent of pride and defiance. There was something strange and unusual about the whole bearing that struck Stella. Stella, unused as she was to meeting horsemen in an English country lane, that's a lot of things that's happening to Stella, right? Okay. Where was I? Okay. Hey for you. How was your day? Hi Emma. Yeah, I also smell romance. Can't wait. Hey Tabby. Yeah, maybe I'll look into the subscriber option. I never felt that people want to subscribe to me, but I'll consider it. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Okay, where was I? As he came a little nearer, she noticed he was dressed in evening dress, excepting his coat, which was velvet, and sat loosely, yet gracefully, upon the stalwart frame. In simple truth, the rider had thrown off his dress coat for a smoking jacket, and still wore his dress boots. Stella saw the moonlight shining upon them, and upon a ruby, which blazed sullenly upon the white hand which held the whip. Hey for you, why can't you take this seriously? Am I a joke to you? Okay. As if rider and horse were one, they came up the lane, and were abreast of her. The man was all unconscious of her presence, but not so the horse. His quick, restless eye had caught sight of the shimmer of Stella's dress, and with a toss of the head, he swerved aside and stood still. The rider brought his eyes from the sky, and raising his whip, cut the horse across the flank, and with a gesture of impatient anger. But the horse, a splendid, huge-boned Irish mare, as fiery and obstinate as a lion, rose on his hind legs instantly, and the whip came down again. Okay, I need to come up with a voice for this character. So maybe a more manly voice. Confound! Oh, sorry, that was a bit too loud. Confound you! What is the matter? Exclaimed its master, Go on, you idiot! The horse pricked his ears at the sound of a familiar voice, but stood stock still, quivering in every limb. Stella saw the whip raised again, and instinctively, before she was aware of it, her womanly protest sprang from her lips. No, no! At the sound of eager, imploring voice, the rider kept his whip poised in the air, and let his arm fall, dragging rather than guiding the horse, forced it near the hedge. Who is it? Who are you? He demanded, angrily. What the? And then he stopped, suddenly, and stared speechlessly, motionless, and transfixed, horse and rider, as it were, turned to stone. Oh my goodness, this guy. Who is this guy? Okay, where was I? Tall and graceful, with that graceful which belongs to the girlhood, which stands on the threshold of womanhood, and with her exquisite face fixed in an expression of mingled fear and pity, and a shyness struggling with her maidenly pride, she made a picture which was lovely enough to satisfy the requirements of the most critical and artistic mind. A picture which he looked up upon and carried with him till the day he died. So, just to give a bit of context, I think she basically snapshot his face in memory, for those of you who are wondering. Okay. For a moment, he sat motionlessly. For a moment, he sat motionless, and as he sat, the moon fell full upon his face, and Stella saw the face of a portrait whose eyes she had, but a few minutes since hidden from her sight. A lifetime of emotion may pass in a minute. A life's fate hang upon the balance of a stroke of time. It was only for a moment that they looked into each other's eyes in silence. But that moment meant so much to each of them. It was the horse that broke the spell by attempting to rise again. With a slight movement of the hand, Lancaster windward forced him down, and then slid from the saddle and stood at Stella's feet, hat in hand. Even then he paused, as if afraid, lest the word should caution the vision to vanish into thin air. But at last he opened his lips. I beg your pardon. That was all. 4 words only, and words that he hears daily, words that have almost lost their import from too familiar commonplace, and yet, as he said them, they sounded so entirely, so earnestly, so intensely significant, and full of meaning that all the commonplace drifted from them, and they conveyed the listener's ear a real and eager prayer for forgiveness, so real and earnest that to have been past them by the conventional smile and bow would have been an insult, and impossible. But it was not the only words and the tone, but a voice that thrilled through Stella's soul, and seemed to have waked an echoing chord. Oh no, she is falling in love. I see where this is going. Okay. The picture which had so awed her had been dumb and voiceless, but now it seemed as if she had spoken, even as if had smiled. And for a moment, she felt a woman's desire to shut off the sound, as she had shut off the smiling eyes. It was the maidenless impulse of self-protection. Against what evil did she not know or dream? I beg your pardon, he said again, his voice deep and musical, his eyes raised to her. Okay, if his voice is deep, I guess I can voice him. I guess that works, right, guys? Okay. I'm afraid I frightened you. I thought I was alone here. Will you forgive me? Stella looked at him, and a faint color stole her cheeks. Is it I who should beg pardon? I'm not frightened, but your horse was... And by me? He half glanced at the horse, standing quiet for now, with his bridle over his arm. He is an idiot, he said, quickly. An obstinate idiot, and incapable of fear. It was a mere pretense. For which you punished him, said Stella, with a quick smile. He looked up at her, and slowly they came into his eyes, and his lips, not hips, that smile of which Mr. Atteridge had spoken, and which Stella had foreseen. You are afraid I'm gonna whip him again? Yes, she said, with simple directness. He looked at her with a curious smile. You're right, he said. I was. There are times where I require a little correction. Tonight is one of them. We have not seen each other for some little time, and he has forgotten who is master. But I shall not forget your no, and spare the whip. Are you satisfied? It was a strange speech, closing with a strangely abrupt question. It was characteristic of the speaker, who never in all his life probably had known for a moment what nervousness or embarrassment meant. Judging by his tone, the easy flow of the musical voice, the frank, open manner, one would have never imagined that this meeting with a strange and beautiful girl was the most matter-of-fact affair. Are you satisfied? He repeated, as Stella remained silent, trying to fight against the charm of his simple and direct manner. If not, perhaps that will do it. And taking the whip, a strong hunter's crop, in both his hands, he broke it into two as easily as if it was a reed, and flung it over his shoulder. Stella flushed, but she laughed, and her dark eyes beamed down on him with serious archness. Yes, Emma, I agree. I think it's too early. I think she's falling way too hard. Does that not matter? It looks as if you were afraid she not keep your promise. He smiled at her. It does, he said. You're right. I may have been tempted beyond my strength. He's a bad-tempered beast, and I am another. Why do you laugh? He broke off, his voice changing as subtly as musical instruments. Stella hesitated a moment. I beg you would tell me. I shall not be offended. She laughed and clung with one hand to the lilac, looking down at him. I was thinking how fortunate that he could not whip you. And it's not fair, as you both are so bad-tempered, that only one should get punished. He did not laugh, as another man would have done. But there came into her dark eyes a flash of surprised amusement, such as might have shone in those of giant Gulliver, with some Lilliputian. Struck him with a pin-sized stick, and his lips parted with a smile. Okay, quick break. The English that they use, crazy. 1 second. Okay, where was I? It was a natural reflection, he said, after a pause. Would you let me help you down? Stella shook her head. Somehow she felt safe up there above him, where but the dark eyes could reach her. Thank you. No. I'm gathering some lilac. Do not trouble. Hey Farhana, you like that? I I hope you're enjoying that. Hopefully one day I can voice for Love and Deep Space. Hopefully. Pray. Anyway, where was I? And she turned slightly from him, and she stretched upon her hand with a branch above her head. The next moment he sprang up with a bang lightly and stood beside her. Permit me, he said, and with one sweep he drew the fragrant branch within her reach. Hey Tears, thank you so much for coming in. Hi Tabby. No, it's not actually raining, it's just for the sound. Okay, where was I? And now would you come down? He asked, as if she was some willful child. Stella smiled, and he held his hand. She put hers into it, and his fingers closed over it with a grasp firm as steel, but as smooth as a woman's, as the warm fingers closed over hers, which were cold with a long grasp of the branch above her head. A thrill ran through her and caused her to shudder slightly. You're cold, he said, instantly. The spring evenings are treacherous. Have you far to go? I'm not cold. Thanks, she said with quick alarm, for there was a look in his eyes and a movement in his hand which seemed to give warning he was about to take his coat off. I'm not cold at all. I'm not at all cold. Have you far to go? He repeated, with the air, gentle as it was, of a man who was accustomed to have his questions answered. Not far. To the little white gate there, she answers. The little white gate. To Atteridge, the artist, he said gently, with a tone of surprise. Stella bent her head. His eyes scanned her face. You live there? Are staying there? Yes. I never saw you in Windward before. No, I was never here till tonight. Till tonight, he echoed. I knew I had not seen you before. There was something in the tone, wholly unlike commonplace flattery, that brought the color to Stella's face. They had reached the gate by this time, he walking by her side, the bridle thrown over his arm, the great horse pacing quiet and lamb-like, and Stella stopped. Good night, she said. He stopped short and looked at her, his head thrown back as she had seen he rode toward her, his eyes fixed intently on her face, and seemingly to sink through her downcast eyes in her soul. Good night, he replied. Wait. It was a word of command, for all its musical gentleness, and Stella, womanlike, stopped. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It was a word of command, for all its musical gentleness, and Stella, womanlike, stopped. I'm going away, he said, not abruptly, but with calmness directness. If you have only come tonight, I shall not be able to learn your name. Before I go, will you tell it me? Will you tell it me? Stella smiled. Why not? My name is Stella Atteridge. I am Mr. Atteridge's niece. Stella, he repeated. Stella. Thank you. I shall not forget. My name. And he raised his hat with a simple gesture of proud humility. is windward. Leicester, windward. I know it, said Stella, and the next moment she could have recalled the impulsive words back again. You know it, he said, and came here only tonight. How is that? Stella's brow contracted, dark and full. They met across her brow in true Southern fashion. Hey Tabby, thank you so much for the cat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Hey Emma. Yeah, maybe royal blood. Okay. Where was I? Right. Stella's brow contracted, dark and full. They met across her brow in true Southern fashion, and lent a significant elegance to her face. She would have given much to avoid answering. How's that? He asked, his eyes fixed on hers. It is very simple, she said, as if vexed at her hesitation. I saw your portrait and knew you. He smiled a curious smile. Knew me before we met? I wonder. He paused, and his eyes seemed to have read her thoughts. I wonder whether you were prejudiced by what you saw, by the foreshadowing of me. Is that a fair question? It is a strange one, said Stella. Is it? Well, I will not press it. Good night. And he raised his hat. Good night. And goodbye, she said. Impulsively again, she held up her hand. His eyes showed no surprise, whatever he may have felt, as he took her hand and held it. No, he said, as he let her draw it away. Not goodbye. I have changed my mind. I shall not go. It is only good night. With a smile flashing out of his eyes, he leaped upon his horse and was gone. That is chapter 2. How are you guys enjoying it so far? Oh, that's a lot of big words. Okay, that's the first 2 chapters of this story. And also this is, before I forget, this story is Only a Girl's Love by Charles Garvice. Hey Emma, you feel not okay? Hey Tears, yeah, thank you so much. You're supposed to feel relaxed. Okay. Well, okay, so that is all the time I have today for the reading stream. Yeah, so now I'm just going to chit chat. So, okay. I'll be stopping my reading stream here. So what do you guys think of the story? I do not feel okay. I do think that I do feel a romance that's tingling. I'm not too comfortable with it, especially so much that the uncle was like, no, make sure not to go towards this man. This is a terrible man. And yet she's like, oh no, he's so handsome. He's so handsome and dreamy. He's like the perfect guy. Yo, this kind of story just happens way too often, and I do hope there's a plot twist. I do hope that there's a really, I don't know, funny plot twist or something. Because I am not okay.